My fingers clenched together so tightly they hurt. The air was thick with tension, and the scent of leather-bound books mixed with the faint aroma of old wood. My father's will reading, something I had dreaded, yet forced myself to attend, was about to begin. Across the polished mahogany table, my stepmother, Victoria, sat with an amused smirk on her face. Dressed in a tailored black dress that screamed luxury, she twirled the diamond ring on her finger, the same ring my father once said belonged to my mother. Beside her, her son, Adam, lounged in his chair, exuding arrogance. The lawyer, a composed middle-aged man named Mr. Langston, cleared his throat, flipping open a thick folder. But before he could utter a word, Victoria let out a low, mocking chuckle. "There's really no need for this," she said, waving a manicured hand. "We moved everything into my name weeks ago. So, don't waste your time." My stomach twisted. My heart pounded so loudly in my ears I almost missed the way she smirked at me, like a queen sitting on her throne. Adam leaned back, his arms crossed, waiting for me to crumble. I didn't move. I didn't even blink. Something in Mr. Langston's expression told me that Victoria had spoken too soon. He didn't argue with her. He simply reached for another document, pulled it from his folder, and slid it across the table. "Actually," he said, his voice steady, "you might want to read this first." Victoria's smirk wavered. Slowly, she reached for the stack of papers, her confidence faltering. As her eyes scanned the first page, something shifted in her face. The smug amusement drained away, replaced by something else, something like disbelief. Her fingers trembled as she turned the page. Then another. Then another. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Her eyes snapped up to Mr. Langston. "What is this?" Her voice was sharp, panicked. Adam leaned forward, frowning. "Mom? What's wrong?" Mr. Langston adjusted his glasses, his expression impassive. "That, Mrs. Callahan, is your late husband's final amendment to his will. Signed and notarized just 3 days before his passing." Victoria's breath hitched. This isn't possible," she whispered, flipping through the pages faster now, her fingers shaking. He couldn't. "Oh, but he did," Mr. Langston interrupted smoothly. "You see, Mr. Callahan made some last-minute decisions. And it seems that everything you thought was yours isn't." She went pale. For the first time since my father's death, the woman who had tormented me, belittled me, and treated me like an outsider in my own family home looked afraid. I leaned back in my chair, my hands steady now, and watched the empire she had built on deception crumble before her eyes. And I had barely even begun. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Victoria flipped the final page, her lips parting as she read the words she clearly never expected to see. Then, slowly, she looked at me. "You," she hissed. "You did this." I arched a brow. "I don't think I signed those papers, Victoria." Her hands curled into fists. Adam stood abruptly, snatching the papers from her, his eyes darting over the text. The color drained from his face. "This is a joke. There's no way Dad would." "He did." Mr. Langston's tone was calm, unshakable. "Your father, Mr. Callahan, transferred full ownership of the estate, assets, and businesses to his daughter. That includes the house, the vacation homes, the stock shares, and the controlling interest in Callahan Enterprises." My stepmother let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "No. No, this is ridiculous. He loved me. He trusted me. He wouldn't just give everything to this." She spat the word like venom. "Ungrateful girl." I kept my expression neutral, but inside, I was relishing every second of this. "I guess he changed his mind," I said. Victoria shot up from her chair, nearly knocking over the glass of water in front of her. "This isn't happening." "Oh, it is," Mr. Langston replied coolly. "The documents are legally binding." Adam turned to me, his jaw tight. "You set this up." I tilted my head, feigning innocence. I'm not sure how I could have, considering I wasn't even aware of it myself. Victoria turned on the lawyer. You knew about this. You helped her, didn't you?" Mr. Langston sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. Mrs. Callahan, I am an attorney. I do not help anyone. I simply execute my client's wishes. And Mr. Callahan's wishes were crystal clear. I watched as her world unraveled. For years, she had looked at me like I was nothing, like I didn't belong. She had stripped away everything that connected me to my father, taken his time, his love, and now she thought she had taken his legacy. She was wrong. I could almost taste the bitterness in her silence. "This isn't over," she whispered, her voice shaking. I met her gaze head-on. "No, Victoria. It's only just begun." Victoria's lips pressed into a thin line, her hands shaking as she gripped the papers like they might disintegrate in her grasp. I could see it in her eyes, the moment realization hit. Everything she thought she controlled was gone. Adam's expression twisted with fury. "This has to be illegal," he barked, slamming a hand on the table. "There's no way Dad would have given everything to her. We were his family." I let out a slow breath, keeping my composure. "Oh, now you want to act like family?" Mr. Langston adjusted his glasses and leaned forward. "Your father made his decision crystal clear. Not only did he transfer all assets to his daughter, but he also ensured that there would be no contestation of the will. Any attempts to fight this will result in an automatic forfeiture of any remaining allowances." Victoria paled. Adam's hands clenched into fists. "Allowances? What allowances?" Mr. Langston pulled out another document. "Your father was fair, even in the end. He designated a modest trust fund for each of you. However, if either of you attempts to legally contest his final wishes, you will receive nothing." Victoria's breath hitched. "How much?" Mr. Langston's lips twitched slightly, as if he was almost amused by how fast her outrage turned to desperation. "You will each receive a monthly stipend of $5,000. Adam choked. "That's nothing." I barely held back a laugh. "Nothing?" Oh, how quickly things changed. For years, Adam had flaunted my father's money as if he were royalty. He drove sports cars, threw lavish parties, and belittled me for not having the same access to wealth. And now, he was faced with the reality of surviving on what, to him, was pocket change. Victoria turned back to me, her eyes burning with hatred. "You planned this," she accused. "You manipulated him, poisoned him against us." I tilted my head. "Funny. I thought you said he loved and trusted you? If that were true, why would he change his will?" Her lips parted, but no words came out. For the first time in years, she had no control, and I intended to make sure she never got it back. Victoria was breathing hard now, her knuckles white against the edge of the table. She turned to Mr. Langston, her voice barely above a whisper. "The house, it's still mine, isn't it?" Mr. Langston slid another paper toward her. "No, Mrs. Callahan. The estate, including all properties, was transferred to Ms. Callahan in full. You no longer have any legal right to reside in the main house." Silence. Then, Victoria laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. "You expect me to just leave? This is my home, my life." I folded my hands on the table, my voice calm. "I want you out by the end of the week." Her head snapped toward me, eyes wide with disbelief. Adam shot up from his chair. "You can't do that." I met his furious gaze. "I can, and I will." Victoria's breath came in short gasps. "You wouldn't." I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the polished wood. "After everything you've done to me, you're lucky I'm giving you a week." She was silent for a long moment. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she asked, "Where are we supposed to go?" I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. Instead, I stood up, smoothing the front of my dress. "That's not my problem, is it?" By the time I arrived at the estate later that evening, I found Victoria pacing in the grand foyer, her hands wringing together. The chandeliers cast golden light across the polished marble floors, but there was a different energy in the air tonight. Panic. She turned at the sound of my footsteps, her face twisting with fury. "You can't do this." I took my time removing my coat, draping it over one of the antique chairs in the entryway. "Oh, but I can. And I am." She scoffed, arms crossing over her chest. You don't even know how to manage a house like this. You've never earned anything in your life. I met her gaze steadily. And what exactly have you earned, Victoria? A life built on manipulating my father? Using his money to live in luxury while treating me like I was nothing. Her mouth pressed into a thin line. I took a step closer, lowering my voice. He saw through you in the end. And now I want you gone. Adam stormed in from the hallway, his phone clenched in his hand. This isn't over, you hear me? He growled. I'll find a way to fight this. I smirked. Go ahead. Contest the will. See how much that gets you. His eyes burned with rage, but deep down, he knew the truth. He had no power here anymore. Victoria's breath trembled. You're cruel. I sighed, my gaze softening just a little. No, Victoria. You are cruel. I'm just giving you a taste of what you've been serving me for years. She swallowed hard, and for the first time, I saw something resembling regret flicker in her eyes. But it was too late for that. I turned and headed upstairs to my father's old study, where the real work of reclaiming my life was about to begin. I stepped into my father's old study, inhaling the scent of aged leather and cigar smoke that still clung to the walls. It was strange, standing here now, where he spent countless nights buried in contracts and business calls, while the people who had stolen so much from me were scrambling downstairs, realizing their reign was over. The mahogany desk stood exactly as he had left it, papers stacked neatly, the family crest embossed on the corner of a thick folder. My fingers traced the grain of the wood, memories flooding back. I used to sit on the floor as a child while he worked, scribbling in my notebooks, dreaming of the day I'd have a place in his world. Victoria had made sure that dream never came true until now. A knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. Mr. Langston stepped in, his expression unreadable. There's something you should know, he said, holding out another document. I took it carefully, my eyes scanning the heading. Addendum to the last will and testament of Richard Callahan. My heart pounded. What is this? Mr. Langston hesitated. Your father was aware that Victoria and Adam were moving assets behind his back. He suspected they would attempt to take everything before his passing. So, he made sure there was one final safeguard. I flipped through the pages, my pulse quickening. My father had written a letter. To me. And as I read the first line, my throat tightened. My dearest daughter, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer here. But know this, I saw everything. I saw what they did to you. And I am sorry it took me so long to set things right. Tears blurred my vision. He had known. All those years when I thought I was alone in my pain, he had seen it. And he had fixed it in the only way he could. I clenched the letter in my hands. My stepmother had spent years trying to erase me from this family. But in the end, my father had made sure she could never win. I had won. And now I intended to use it. Victoria was waiting for me when I came back downstairs, arms crossed, her eyes red-rimmed, but still filled with defiance. Adam sat stiffly beside her, his jaw tight, his phone gripped in his hand like he was still searching for some last-ditch escape route. Well, she sneered. Are you finished gloating? I stopped at the base of the stairs, arms folded. No, Victoria. I'm here to offer you one last chance to leave with dignity. She scoffed. Dignity? You stole everything from us. I let out a sharp laugh. I stole from you. I stepped forward, voice steady. You stole my father's time. You stole the love he had for his family and twisted it into something ugly. You tried to steal his legacy. But in the end, the only thing you actually succeeded in was proving how little you meant to him. Her face twisted with pain, but she masked it quickly. I inhaled deeply. You have 1 week. I won't throw you onto the streets with nothing. Adam shot up. Damn right you won't. We're entitled to. I cut him off. You're entitled to nothing. My voice was sharp. But I'm offering you something anyway. My father left you both a stipend. I don't have to honor it, but I will. I may not be cruel, but I won't forget. Victoria stared at me, her pride crumbling. For the first time, she looked defeated. Adam opened his mouth to argue again, but she raised a hand, silencing him. She looked at me with an expression I had never seen from her before. Regret. Maybe, in that moment, she realized she had gambled everything and lost. The news hit the business world fast. Callahan Enterprises under new leadership. Daughter of late Richard Callahan takes control. The media was eating it up. Some called it a Cinderella story, a rightful heir reclaiming her legacy. Others speculated on the scandal, whispering about how Victoria had been ousted. It didn't matter. The first board meeting was in 2 days, and I had to be ready. I wasn't just here to take back what was mine. I was here to prove I could run it, and I would. The day Victoria and Adam left the estate, I stood on the balcony, watching as the staff loaded their luggage into a sleek black car. Victoria walked toward the front gates, her movements slower, less sure than usual. Adam followed, his usual arrogance dulled into silent bitterness. As she reached the car, she turned back one last time, her eyes meeting mine. For the briefest moment, there was something softer there. Then, without a word, she got in, and just like that, they were gone. For the first time in years, I felt free. And now, my real work was about to begin. The day after Victoria and Adam left, I stood before the towering glass skyscraper that bore my father's name, Callahan Enterprises. For years, I had walked past this building, knowing it was the empire my father built, but never believing I would have a place in it. Victoria made sure I never got a foothold.
But now?
I owned it. The security guards recognized me immediately, standing a little straighter as I stepped inside. My heels clicked against the polished floors, my reflection staring back at me from the pristine surfaces. Employees glanced up, some whispering, others watching warily. They knew who I was, but they didn't know what I was capable of.
Yet.
The elevator ride to the top floor was silent except for the hum of the machinery. I felt my pulse quicken as the doors opened to the executive suite. And there, sitting at the conference table, was a room full of men, board members, executives, people who had worked under my father. And every single one of them looked at me as if I didn't belong. One of them, a graying man named Martin Pierce, leaned back in his chair, fingers laced together. "Miss Callahan," he said smoothly. "It's surprising to see you here. We assumed you'd liquidate your holdings and move on." I let out a soft laugh, walking to the head of the table. "And why would I do that, Mr. Pierce? This company is mine now." A few exchanged glances. Some smirked. Some stayed unreadable. Pierce's smile didn't waver. "With all due respect, you have no experience running a company of this magnitude." I sat down, leaning forward. "And yet, my father trusted me to do so over any of you." Silence. Pierce's jaw tightened slightly. "The business world is cutthroat, Miss Callahan. It isn't built for." "You mean it isn't built for me?" I cut him off. "Because I don't fit your version of what a CEO should be?" More silence. Then, one of the younger executives, a man named Daniel Ward, cleared his throat. "The fact is, Miss Callahan owns the controlling interest. Whether we like it or not, she has the final say." I met his gaze. Unlike the others, there was no condescension in his expression, just curiosity. Pierce's lips pressed together, clearly irritated that someone had spoken up in my favor. I tapped my nails against the table. "Let's be clear about something," I said. "I didn't take over this company to sell it. I took over because it was stolen from me before I ever had a chance to be part of it. And I will not let my father's legacy rot under the hands of people who doubted me before I even stepped into the room." No one spoke. I stood. "Now, if anyone has an issue with that, my lawyer would be happy to process your resignations." Pierce's mouth twitched, but he said nothing. I smiled. "Good. Now, let's talk about the future." After the meeting, Daniel Ward caught up with me in the hallway. "That was bold," he said, falling into step beside me. "Was it?" I mused. "I thought it was just necessary." He chuckled. "They're sharks. Pierce, especially. He had a hand in a lot of my father's decisions." Daniel hesitated before nodding. "And not all of them were in your father's best interests." I stopped walking. "What do you mean?" Daniel exhaled. There were irregularities in the company's financials in the months before your father passed. I don't have proof yet, but I think Pierce and some of the others were moving assets, just like your stepmother was. My jaw tightened. And you didn't tell my father? I tried, Daniel said grimly, but he was already sick. And before I could push harder, Victoria got more control over his decisions. I clenched my fists. Find the proof, I said. Because if they were stealing from my father, I will burn them to the ground. Daniel studied me for a long moment, then nodded. I'll get you what you need. That night, I was in my father's study, sifting through the letters he had left me, when there was a knock at the door. When I opened it, my breath caught. Victoria. She stood there, not in the sharp, elegant dresses she always wore, but in jeans and a sweater. Her makeup was lighter, and for the first time, she looked small. What do you want? I asked coldly. She hesitated. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, I need to talk. I didn't move. About what? Her throat bobbed. About your father. Something in her tone made my stomach tighten. Against my better judgment, I stepped aside. 5 minutes, I said. That's all you get. She walked inside, looking around the house as if she barely recognized it anymore. When she turned back to me, her eyes were wet. There's something I never told you, she whispered. Victoria sat stiffly on the couch, her hands clenching in her lap. I crossed my arms, waiting. She inhaled shakily. I loved your father, she said. Not at first, but eventually I did. I scoffed. You have a funny way of showing love. I know, she whispered, but there's something you don't understand. Richard, your father, he wasn't just sick. He was poisoned. The room seemed to tilt. I stared at her. What? She wiped at her eyes. I knew something was wrong. He was getting sicker too fast. And then, the doctor we always used was suddenly replaced. Adam kept pushing for me to speed up the transfer of assets. A horrible realization crept into my bones. You're saying Adam. She squeezed her eyes shut. I think Adam was helping someone. I just don't know who. My breath came fast. And you're telling me this now? After everything? She nodded. Because I didn't realize how much danger you were in until I lost everything. I stared at her, my heart pounding. If what she was saying was true, my father's death wasn't just fate. It was murder. And someone wanted me out of the picture next. My heart pounded like a war drum. I stared at Victoria, my mind racing. You're saying my father was murdered? My voice came out steadier than I felt.
She swallowed hard, nodding.
I can't prove it, but I know it. And I think Adam was involved. I couldn't breathe. My fingers dug into the armrest of the couch as I tried to process what she was saying. You expect me to believe that? That your son, the one you raised to look down on me, had a hand in killing my father? My voice was sharp, cutting. Victoria flinched but held my gaze. I didn't raise Adam to be a killer. Her voice cracked. But I raised him to believe he deserved everything. And I looked the other way when he became someone I didn't recognize anymore. I clenched my jaw. I had spent years blaming Victoria for everything. And now she was sitting here, looking broken, telling me her own son had done something monstrous. I wanted to hate her. But more than anything, I wanted the truth. I stood abruptly. Get out. She looked startled. I pointed at the door. You had your 5 minutes. Now get out. Victoria hesitated, then slowly rose to her feet. I know you don't believe me, she murmured. But be careful, all right? She turned and walked toward the door, pausing for just a second before stepping out into the night. I didn't move until I heard the gate close behind her. Then I collapsed onto the couch, my hands shaking. I had won the battle against Victoria and Adam. But now it seemed there was another war I didn't even know I was fighting. And I needed to find out exactly who my enemy was. The next morning, I called Daniel Ward. We need to talk, I said. An hour later, we met at a small cafe away from prying eyes. I had barely taken a sip of my coffee when I dropped the bombshell. I think my father was murdered. Daniel's cup paused midair. He slowly set it down, his expression unreadable. That's a serious accusation. I nodded. Victoria says she doesn't have proof, but she noticed he was getting sick too fast. And then the family doctor was replaced. And Adam. I swallowed hard. Adam was pushing for asset transfers before he even passed. Daniel exhaled, rubbing his jaw. I don't want to say this, but I don't doubt it. I leaned forward. You knew something was off? I suspected, he admitted. There were financial inconsistencies before your father passed. Assets disappearing. Decisions being made that weren't like him. At first, I thought it was just Victoria pulling strings, but if Adam was involved... A chill crawled up my spine. Then this goes deeper than we thought. Daniel nodded slowly. We need proof. I inhaled deeply. Then let's find it. Later that night, I went back to my father's study, searching for anything that might tell me what had really happened in his final days. I flipped through his old appointment books, his emails, his notes. Nothing stood out until I found a sealed envelope tucked into a drawer. My breath hitched as I opened it. Inside was a handwritten note from my father. If anything happens to me, don't trust the ones closest to you. My hands shook as I read the next part. Look for the missing investments. Follow the money. I inhaled sharply. My father knew something was wrong. He had tried to leave me breadcrumbs. And now I had my first lead. I grabbed my phone and dialed Daniel. I found something, I said. The next few days were a blur of digging. Daniel and I combed through financial records, old bank transfers, and medical reports. And what we found sent a chill down my spine. A large sum of money had been withdrawn from my father's accounts weeks before he died, but it didn't go into the family's holdings. It was wired to a private account, an account that had Adam's name on it. My stomach twisted. It was real. The betrayal, the greed, the crime. But he wasn't acting alone. Because the second name tied to the account? Martin Pierce. The same board member who had tried to push me out. A sick realization hit me. My father hadn't just been murdered. He had been eliminated by the people closest to him. And I was their next loose end. I didn't waste time. I stormed into the next board meeting, throwing the bank statements onto the table. Pierce barely flicked his eyes over them before leaning back in his chair. I was wondering when you'd figure it out. Cold rage filled me. You poisoned my father. He didn't flinch. Your father was in the way. He was too sentimental, too trusting. He sighed, shaking his head. And now, so are you. I barely had time to register his words before two security guards stepped forward, grabbing my arms. You've done well, but you should have left when you had the chance, Pierce murmured. You have no idea how deep this goes. I struggled, but they were too strong. Was this it? Had I walked right into a trap?
No.
Not today. Before the guards could drag me away, the doors burst open. And in walked Victoria, with a federal agent beside her. Pierce's smug expression froze.
What?
I figured out too late what was happening, Victoria said, her voice shaking. But I wasn't going to let them take you too. The agent held up a badge. Martin Pierce, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, embezzlement, and suspected involvement in the death of Richard Callahan. Chaos erupted. The guards released me instantly, stepping away as Pierce was shoved against the table and handcuffed. Adam tried to run. He didn't make it far. Within minutes, the two of them were dragged out, screaming protests. I turned to Victoria, still stunned. Why? She exhaled, looking tired. Because for the first time in my life, I wanted to do the right thing. And for the first time, I believed her. Weeks later, I stood outside my father's grave. The world had moved on, the scandal making headlines, but I stood there quietly, letting the weight of everything settle in. Justice had been served, but the loss still remained. I did it, Dad. I whispered. I made sure they didn't win. A breeze swept through the cemetery, rustling the leaves. And for the first time in a long time, I felt peace. The legacy he left me wasn't just about